Oh, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our midweek COVID update on Erev Yom Kippur. And being Erev Yom Kippur, we've got some pretty good news because we really are coming out of the third wave. So this is the national graph over here, and you can see that it's coming down, quite different to the second and the first waves because, as I mentioned earlier, we haven't got the same symmetry as we got the first and second, and also certainly quite prolonged curve as compared to those first two waves. Nationally, slightly higher than the second wave in terms of intensity, but when we come to Gauteng, certainly quite a different picture. This is the Gauteng graph. See, very much higher. Just looking back at it now, we certainly in Gauteng bore the brunt of the third wave. We had the kind of most severe compared to the other provinces, but a reasonably nice symmetrical curve, and it's come right the way down. So in terms of our judgment, in terms of our parameters, yeah, we're out of the third wave in Gauteng. If we look at the Hatzola data for the community, also coming down quite markedly in terms of the active cases and also new cases. However, I just point out that we still are getting new cases in Hatzola, 21 per week, obviously very much less than we had in the peak of the curve, but it's still grumbling along. And even though we're out of the third wave, there's a sort of a kind of low-level chronic ongoing infection. The other provinces, not quite the same intensity as Gauteng, and more or less the same as the second wave, but also coming down, but not quite out of the third wave at the moment. This is the Western Cape. Similar kind of picture of the Eastern Cape. In fact, in most of the other provinces as well. KwaZulu-Natal coming out of the third wave and coming down, not quite reached the baseline yet. Free State the same. And Northern Cape, in fact, the other provinces very similar. Now, I've had quite a number of questions, and in fact, I was actually on a TV interview this morning on ENCA where this issue came up, and people are wondering what is the relevance, what is the importance of the positive tests? So I thought I'd just spend a minute or two on that and how we use this as a parameter of the extent and the severity of the epidemic. First of all, the number of tests, as you can see, mirrors the waves. This is the first wave, the second wave, and the third wave. Just the number of tests, in other words, people that are going to have a swab done to a laboratory to see are they COVID positive or not. Probably more precise, though, is the percentage of positives of those tests that are submitted to the laboratories. And you see very closely paralleling the first, second, and third waves. So at the height of the epidemic, we're getting figures of about 31, 32, about a third of the swabs of the specimens sent to the laboratory come back positive. As against in the baseline and the load after the wave comes down, it's very much lower, 3 to 4%. We're now 10.6%, so it's reflecting that the wave is coming down, not quite reached the baseline yet, and this is quite a good parameter. So the percentage, the proportion of positive tests we use as a good measure of the intensity of the epidemic. All right, let's go on now onto the vaccination status. Where are we in terms of vaccine coverage? To date, that's up to yesterday, just over 11 million people have either been fully vaccinated or partially vaccinated. That's about 28% of the population. So it's creeping up to about a third of the adult population being vaccinated either partially or fully. Fully vaccinated is about 19%. So close on 1 in 5 individuals have been fully vaccinated. In other words, have received either 1 dose of Johnson & Johnson or 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. And partially vaccinated, slightly higher than that. So we are progressing. There's still a way to go. But what's interesting, I think I touched on it last time, but I'll mention it again, is that when you look at the graph of the 7-day moving average and the graph of the hospital admissions, in the first and the second wave, where there was no vaccine coverage, the hospital admissions curve fitted pretty snugly, except for the apices, pretty snugly into the 7-day moving average of daily cases curve. When we come to the third wave, where now the vaccine coverage is starting to kick in, and particularly in the older individuals who are more likely to be hospital admitted, we can see that there is a separation, detachment of the hospital admission curve from the 7-day average of daily cases curve. This is telling us, starting to tell us, that there is starting to be an impact of vaccination on hospital admissions. So that's good news. I'll come to that again just now. If we come back to where we are with vaccinations, yeah, we are doing well, but not as well as we really would like to. You know, we predicted that we'd try to get to 300,000 daily vaccinations over the 5-day period, because obviously on the weekends it drops quite markedly. And we're now a little bit below that. We're 243,000 is the latest figure. We didn't quite reach, well, let me get the pointer out, probably a bit better. Pointer options. Didn't quite reach the peak of the 280,000 about a month ago. So there still is quite a bit of vaccine hesitancy. I know this is a very, very complicated slide, but you can see that really if we look at those who are either very willing or willing, we're at about 62%, 54%, 59% in different age groups. Interesting, you look at the provinces, and the Western Cape, in fact, has got the largest number, 54%. Sorry, the other way around. We've got the lowest number of people that are either very willing or willing. And there's 55% are either neutral or are unwilling to be vaccinated. Gauteng a little bit better, Northwest very much better. So there is quite a bit of vaccine hesitancy. Either people who are apathetic, who couldn't be bothered to go and be vaccinated, or have a transport difficulty getting access to vaccination sites, or the larger group are the people who are hesitant, are still nervous or worried about the vaccine, worried about the side effects. And we still need to work on that group to reduce the number of vaccine hesitants, because that's really going to be key to controlling the epidemic. We still haven't solved this problem that it is that the male side of the population are a bit more reluctant to be vaccinated as compared to the female. It's more or less at about a 2-to-1, particularly in the older age group, which is the important age group. Quite a lot more women than men are coming up for vaccination. If we look at that age group, the 60 plus, the one that we're really focusing on in terms of reducing hospitalization and serious disease, also a way to go. We're now about 58% of that group being immunized. We really want to get a very much higher level, particularly specifically in that age group, to reduce hospitalization and severe disease. Now, in fact, a few of the viewers, not just one, but a few viewers asked me, is there any data on people that have been hospitalized or severe other parameters of severe infection or mortality, comparing the unvaccinated as compared to the vaccinated? Now, we still got quite a ways to go in terms of getting that data in South Africa. So I thought I'd start off with some overseas data. This is from the United States, the Center for Disease Control. And you can see there's a marked difference in terms of hospitalization amongst those that are unvaccinated as compared to vaccinated. So vaccinated individuals form a very small proportion in the United States of hospitalized individuals. Actually, let me show you more clearly on these graphs. When it comes to cases, again, this is the blue curve over here. Those are fully vaccinated compared to the black line, the not fully vaccinated or unvaccinated. You see that there's quite a big difference, although the cases, in terms of cases, is also creeping up a bit. But when you come to hospitalizations, this is very low amongst the fully vaccinated as compared to the partially or unvaccinated in terms of hospitalization and in terms of deaths. So again, showing very, very clearly how vaccination markedly reduces severe infections as reflected in hospitalization and deaths, and also somewhat cases, but not quite as marked as with severe infection. the Center for Disease Control, the CDC in the United States, they've estimated and using data from the Delta infection, which is the most contagious, the highly transmissible variant, that vaccination reduces the risk of infection by fivefold reduction of infection, a greater than tenfold reduction for hospitalization, and a greater than tenfold reduction of death. So it's not absolute, but certainly a very much a radical reduction in severe disease. And that's really the main aim of where we are at the moment in terms of vaccination. In South Africa, unfortunately, we'd like more statistics, but there are some statistics that came from the Western Cape. You look at the number of cases recognized or picked up and documented. Only 200 in the Western Cape out of 2,455, or 8%, were amongst people that were vaccinated. But more important, if you look at hospital admissions, only 30 hospital admissions out of 729 were in vaccinated individuals, about 4%. Looking at deaths, even lower, only 5 vaccinated deaths as compared to 292 in the Western Cape, 1.7%. Hopefully we'll get more data, more figures and subsequent updates in the other provinces. But at the moment, we've only got data from the Western Cape. But I think it's pretty reflective of where we are nationally as well. So let me just wind this up about where are we. We are now in our containment phase now. First generation vaccines. And what's important is that the non-pharmaceutical interventions, the restrictions we still need to carry out despite vaccination, they're still obligatory. And I think that's very important now coming up to Yom Kippur, where there will be people coming together, there will be some functions. Please do remember that we do still need to keep all our precautions, our physical distancing, our mask wearing, our avoiding the socializing, and sanitizing hands. So let me now come to the questions which came in. And again, thanks very much for sending these questions. And first of all, the issue of blood clots. One of the viewers sent in a female relative of the age of 70, with some comorbidity, high blood pressure, smoker, and so on, is very worried about blood clots. Now, blood clots are a complication of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine, the vaccines which are adenovirus, we call them adenovirus vectored vaccines. But it's a rare complication. It seems to be mainly in women under the age of 50, between 18 and 50. And really, when I say rare, an instance of 1 in 250,000. It is a serious complication. There have been very few, but a few mortality. But again, let me stress 1 in 250,000 doses. Now, let me contrast that with the background risk of blood clots in women, which is 1 in 2,000. There goes 1 in 250,000, 1 in 2,000 per year. And certainly COVID itself has got a very much higher risk than of the vaccine of blood clots. So it is a rare complication, not found with the Pfizer vaccine at all. Only found, as I say, rarely with the Johnson & Johnson. Then we come to the also rare complication of myocarditis. Myocarditis is an inflammation of the heart muscle. Now, that's a rare complication of the Pfizer vaccine, not seen with the Johnson & Johnson. But also rare, in this case, in the male gender, and also young males and adolescents and boys. This is a viewer who asked about a teenage son, 14-year-old son with Crohn's disease. Now, let me say, Crohn's disease itself is not recognized as a comorbidity for COVID infection, and certainly is not a reason not to be vaccinated. That's for sure. Myocarditis, let me just say 1 or 2 words about myocarditis. Also the same kind of rarity as a blood clot, about 1 in 250,000 doses. Fortunately, myocarditis is not a serious complication. The great majority of cases get better on their own. They're self-limiting. But it is a rare complication with the Pfizer But both of these are rare complications and certainly vastly rarer than the problems, because you also get myocarditis with COVID disease, the problems comparing to the disease that these vaccines prevent. So looking at the balance of risk is vastly in favor of the vaccines. Then I've had quite a number of people asking me about this well-publicized, I think it's got quite a lot of publication in the media, the Sinovac, the Chinese vaccine trial in young children. It's a trial being done in the Safari Makato Health Center, used to be in Garankuwa. It isn't Garankuwa, it used to be called the Garankuwa Medical Site, Madunza, where they are examining the safety as well as the efficacy of the Sinovac vaccine, Coronavac it's called, in children as young as 6 months up to 17 years. Now, this has got nothing to do with the rollout. This is a scientific study, a valuable scientific study, because we do need that scientific information, because ultimately we will be vaccinating children well into the future, certainly not at the moment. We need to concentrate on adults. And this is valuable knowledge, but it is a research trial. The moment Sinovac vaccine has not been procured for the rollout. It's not being used for the rollout, nor is AstraZeneca. These are standby vaccines which we've examined and found to be satisfactory. Both are registered with SAPRA, with the regulatory authority. I must emphasize the rollout is in fact with the two vaccines, the Pfizer and the Johnson & Johnson, of which there's ample supplies. Our problem, as I mentioned earlier, is getting that vaccine to people's arms. It's not the supply of the vaccines. And then there's a question that came up about multiple infections. Why do people who've recovered from COVID get a second, sometimes even a third? Why do people who have been vaccinated also get what we call breakthrough infections? The reason is twofold. One of them is that the immunity is good, but it's not as perfect. It's not absolutely perfect. And in fact, the immunity is not, with COVID, is not as good as, for example, measles, which gives you an excellent, long-lasting, many years, not a lifetime of immunity. It's not like that for a number of reasons. I won't have time to go into it. But it is good immunity, both natural infection and vaccination, but it's not going to be 100% protective. And that's how we still have to do all the precautions at the moment with our current vaccines. And so people will get second, third infections, and they will get breakthrough infections. And it's because that, so it's two things. One of them, the immunity doesn't last that long. And the second is a problem with variants. The variants are antigenically different, and they do escape the effects of either natural infection or the vaccine. And then lastly, I got a question from somebody, a couple, in fact, who came from Australia, where they had the 2 doses of AstraZeneca, plus they had the Pfizer vaccine when they returned to South Africa. And the question now, should they have a second Pfizer vaccine? And I think the answer is definitely, it's absolutely not necessary, really not necessary. In fact, our recommendation, if somebody's come from overseas, even if it's AstraZeneca, which is not used in this country, if they've been fully vaccinated, they've had the 2 doses, and they've had 2 doses of AstraZeneca or Moderna or Pfizer from overseas, and they come back in this country, there's no need for a Pfizer, extra Pfizer dose. And certainly if somebody's had 2 AstraZenecas and a Pfizer, they don't need a 4th vaccine, that for sure. So just to announce that next Wednesday and the following Wednesday are Yom Tovim, the Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret respectively. So there won't be a midweek update next Wednesday and the following Wednesday. The next one will be on the 6th of October, Wednesday the 6th of October. So I just want to wish everybody a easy fast, a meaningful fast, and Gmar Chatima Tova. Thank you very much. Bye.